Please read item 4.
An ordinance authorizing and approving a municipal agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission Transportation Enhancement Funds Program for bicycle pedestrian trail along 350 Highway.
Mr. Knoll, do you have any comments?
Yes, this is a matching grant that we received after applying during the last round of call for projects. The city received a project from the STP program, the CMAC program, and then the Transportation Enhancement, or TE program. This is the TE portion of the three. This one is a 75% grant from the federal government, where it'll pay for 75% of the construction on the project. We anticipate that 75% equals $433,125. Total project construction estimate is $512,000 for the project. Oh, I'm sorry, $577,500 for the project. And then also, in addition to that, there will be engineering costs associated with this. That will be around, we're estimating right now, around $60,000. So the total cost for this project will be $633,000, of which the $433,000 will be from federal funds, from grant funds. So approximately $200,000 will have to come from city funds. And as we discussed at the municipal committee, those funds will come from one-time funds. The $60,000 will need to be expended this year, at which will bring an additional RBA before the board. We have a request for proposals currently issued, and we will receive those proposals next Monday for the engineering services, at which we'll go through the process to select a consultant, and then we'll bring it before the board once we feel comfortable with the selection, if this is approved. The other two items that, one thing that makes these projects, or these the funds, easier to accept, is that on the CMAC funds that we received that grant was to provide bicycle lanes on Blue Ridge Boulevard, in addition to overlaying the project at the same time. We were going to have to overlay that. We had planned to overlay that road next year as well, or yes, next year as well. So that grant will offset some of our expected expenses that we were going to have, to the tune of about $175,000. So of the $200,000 that we have to expend for this grant, some of that is getting offset with the other grant that we knew were expected expenses. So they don't exactly match in the amounts, but it does help offset some of the one-time expenses from the general fund. With that, I think I'll answer any questions that may come up. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Knoll? Any discussion at all?
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Alderman Milson?
So the total amount that the city is expected or committing to pay is $260,000 out of one-time funds?
We're at $577,500 for the total cost. We'll add $60,000 to that, so we'll be at $643,000, and we will receive $433,000. So no, it would be $211,000 would be the maximum amount that the city would have to pay for this project.
And that's still 25% of the cost?
No, that'll actually be more. They will only pay for 75% of construction cost only. They won't reimburse any of the engineering fees. So the engineering fees that we're estimating right now at around $60,000, that is all 100% has to be paid for by the city.
And that's the engineering cost?
That's correct.
Okay.
Surveying and engineering costs.
And granted, I think we need a lot of bike paths, a lot of, development towards that area. But again, in my reality check and looking at this and driving down 350, does it not end at Maple?
Yes, this will go from Blue Ridge Boulevard along on the south side. It will construct curb and a 10-foot bike ped trail along that south side all the way to Maple, which is right there in front of Hy-Vee and Quick Trip.
Right. So then what happens to the bike rider at Maple?
Then they can either cross over at that point into Hy-Vee and go back up north into some of the residential neighborhoods, or hopefully as other development comes along, we can extend this bike ped trail to connect to the bike ped trail at the IHOP development. Sorry, thank you. At the IHOP area. So we're slowly connecting those dots, because right now we have a very short section in front of the Aldi's development. So, but at that point, if they want to continue east, they'll need to join up with everybody else on 350 Highway, which would be their only alternative at this point.
So with this, will there be, because then from Blue Ridge to Gregory would be the first light that they would come into.
Actually, there's the one in front of
in front of the
at Laurel.
Taco Bell and stuff.
Correct.
CVS. Okay, so at that one, are there going to be pedestrian, and I forgot to look if there was, so they can cross safely there, they can go.
Correct, that's
because
what.
You've got a turn lane, you've got 2 lanes, you've got 2 other lanes over here.
Correct,
To be
that's
able to
what
safely maneuver that intersection as well as the next intersection, which is Gregory.
Correct. We're trying to install pedestrian crosswalks across 350 Highway to the north at Laurel, and also at they're in front of Hy-Vee and Quick Trip as well, so we can get them back to the north side.
And so those are going to be able to be for the bike, which would be this project, but those are also pedestrian crosswalks?
Correct.
Okay, because I saw a lot of people walking on 350 last week. Since we're putting money into this short section of the bike path, is there a liability, since we have a percentage cost to that, is there a liability by the city to maintain the safety of that stretch of pedestrian or bike path?
We have to maintain the bike path, yes, all of it. The future maintenance is the responsibility of the city, of the bike path.
And so that's split from the MoDOT on that highway?
No, it's inside of the MoDOT right away, but we'll be responsible, as part of the agreement, it states that we'll be 100% responsible for the maintenance of the bike and the bicycle pedestrian trail. Okay,
now this may be kind of out there, but I know Brent Hughes would probably do it. What if it's snowing? MoDOT goes down that highway, correct?
Mm-hmm, that's
they
correct.
would be responsible then for that section of...
No, I don't believe, you're talking about the clearing of snow and ice from the bike ped trail. I don't know that, I'd have to look at what the maintenance responsibilities are for that. We may treat it similar as we do to sidewalks, that it's the adjacent property owner's responsibility.
Well, and then you also have the aspect that it's a wider area, so people may be using, since there's no sidewalks there, may be using that as a sidewalk going down 350 in that stretch.
That's correct. I still think it's a better solution than what would currently exist.
Well, yeah, the ditches that are there, I grant you that one. And so, are there any donated funds at all for this project?
There could be, but at this current time, no, we don't have any specified donated funds.
Okay.
If there was any community groups that wanted to step up and do some work, they could do that, and we could use that as part of our matching funds.
And so on the OMB audit, if the city expends over $500,000 more than a year, it's required to have an independent audit. Since we're not proposing to spend over $500,000, then we wouldn't be required of that audit?
I'll have to have Jeremy correct me if I'm wrong, but we typically, our audit that we perform meets their requirements. And we probably will in aggregate spend more than $500,000 because of the other grants that we have as well.
Okay. One other question. And I guess this is probably the improvements installed by others. That is that's Gregory and 350. So that would be the Aldi
that's
interchange area.
That's correct.
Because they have to put in the bike trail that matches the bike trails on either side in this proposed.
Correct. They've installed the sidewalk and ADA accessible ramps for the bike ped trail. They just have not installed the 10-foot wide asphalt trail at this point. So that should be here within the next month should be installed.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Pardue?
It's great to see more bike lanes. I move we approve.
No.
Alderman Van Buskirk.
Thank you. This is only about 0.7 of a mile from Blue Ridge to Maple. To eliminate the right shoulder of 350 highway, which carries a tremendous amount of traffic. I'm out there every day and I see it. It's already very congested. And in my estimation, if we eliminate the right shoulder, put up curbing, and then make this pedestrian bike path apart from the highway, which it will be, I think you're creating a traffic hazard on the highway. It, especially when you have stalled vehicles, vehicular accidents, or police stops on the highway, it becomes a tremendous hazard. On the left side, there's maybe a 3-foot strip past the line, really not a shoulder, and it wouldn't be safe to pull off on the left side, if you had problems. Anyway, you always want to do that on the right side. I certainly would have no opposition to improving conditions of 350 highway if we left the shoulder intact. I think a pedestrian walkway would be good. As one of the other aldermen pointed out earlier, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic on the highway. I see more of it all the time. But I believe, that would enhance the roadway. But what we're talking about doing, I think, would be a deterrent to traffic. I think it would be a problem. I realize it's been suggested that this would in some way reduce automobile emissions on the highway. I'm sorry, but as with many politically correct clean air statements, I really believe that's just a lot of hot air. That's not going to happen. It's not going to reduce auto emissions on the highway, and there's no substance to that. We're talking about funding of the project around $200,000, which is going to come out of from the taxpayers, directly from the taxpayers of the city of Raytown. The additional amount, the 400 and some thousand from the federal government, certainly comes from taxpayers also, but directly from the taxpayers of Raytown, we're talking about $200,000. I believe this money could be used in other ways and should be used where there are needs that exist in our city. I hear citizens pleading for street improvements in their neighborhoods, for sidewalks, for street lights, among other things. We have a lot of needs. We have areas of the city that are in urgent need of attention, such as the 83rd Street Bridge. We didn't have the funds to do that last year. This $200,000 could go a long way towards taking care of that kind of project. 59th Street needs some attention. 79th Street needs attention, and a lot of other areas. I realize that, we may get this other grant to do part of Blue Ridge and put in the bike lanes there, and which will give us some additional money for overlay there. But that doesn't mean that extra money has to be taken, that we're not going to spend there, has to be applied to this project. It can be applied to any project. And I'm not sure we're not going to create problems on Blue Ridge when we do that. We're talking about putting in bike lanes and eliminating the turn lanes, and which probably will create some traffic hazards there. I think we need to forget about the grant. We need to use the city's money where it can be better applied. where we really need to use it. It may look great, but I don't think in practical terms and using common sense, I don't think we're applying it to that. That's my estimation. And, I used an analogy in the municipal meeting when we had at municipal committee meeting in regards to this issue. If I had a hole in my shoe, but I had some money to spend, a few funds, it would be like having that hole in my shoe, and instead of repairing that shoe or going to buy a new pair of shoes, I decide, hey, I'm going to go buy a new hat with it. I think it's the same type of situation. It just doesn't make sense to me to not take care of the needs that we really have and to use it on this type of project. We're talking about 7/10 of a mile of highway. And again, in my estimation, we're going to create traffic hazards there and make it dangerous. That highway is already congested, already backed up. Quite often there's backups, almost to 63rd Street. We're going to have backups way beyond that if there's an accident on that stretch of roadway, or if the police have to make a stop on that stretch of roadway, especially during rush hour traffic. Or if someone's vehicle stalls and there's no place to put it. So I really think we could make better use of the citizens' money in this situation, and I don't believe we'd be good stewards of it if we do this. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Knoll, just for the sake of a couple comments, I'd like clarified for myself, maybe for the rest of the board, that the reconstruction of 350 Highway, that's what I heard Alderman Van Buskirk say, is going to inhibit traffic, make it unsafe. Would you agree with that? I mean, has MoDOT done any kind of study to determine that what this project would do would indeed inhibit traffic and make it unsafe?
There was a corridor study completed for this section of 350 Highway that MoDOT, the City of Raytown, and the City of Kansas City participated in. And that was the consensus at that point, was to add, basically through Raytown, was to make this more of a urban roadway with curb and gutter through there. From safety concerns, MoDOT will have the approving of, without their approval, we cannot move forward with the actual construction plan. So they have the approving authority for those plans. So if they have, and will be part of the design process as well. So if they see something inherently unsafe, I'm sure they will bring it to their attention, as well as the design engineer that would be ultimately be selected. They would design for that safety as well. So that would affect address the safety concerns. I don't anticipate that any of this work will create an unsafe roadway.
Okay, I'm going to just repeat that because you said a lot of things there. That you're saying that MoDOT does not believe that it will inhibit traffic or make it unsafe.
That's correct.
Is that what you said? Okay. I do have another question regarding comment. Do they take any kind of a traffic count for pedestrians? Do we really have an idea how many pedestrians walk 350 Highway?
Just anecdotal evidence is all we would have at this point. We don't necessarily count pedestrians at this point.
Okay. Do we have, Mr. Mock, do you have a question? Anything you'd like to discuss?
Mr. Azier.
I'm sorry. Okay. Any other discussion? Oh, okay. Any other discussion? Alderman Kramer?
First of all, staff has gone out of their way to try to find funding for projects here in our community that, although it does come from taxpayer money at the state level and federal level, it's money that's beneficial to our community. What we have done is targeted the 350 Highway corridor as a redevelopment zone for our community, and part of redeveloping that is enhancing and changing things as we know it that has been the norm for a number of years. But we're trying to make it appealing for people that want to come here and shop. And some of those people walk, some of them ride bikes, some of them drive cars. And we want to make it appealing and accessible for anybody that were to come down through there. And, you know, I got a lot of thoughts going through my mind based on previous comments, but Alderman Van Buskirk broke out his analogy of the shoe and the hat, but I am going to break out mine in that you can't change anything if you don't change anything. If things remain the same, you're going to have the same outcome. But sometimes you got to change stuff and do things differently. Just because you've done them this way for a number of years doesn't make them right or the best for the community. As far as safety goes, there are stretches of I-70 that is 70 miles an hour where there's no breakdown lane, no shoulder for people to pull over. But we seem to be able to manage that at a 65, 70 mile an hour clip when we've got 350 highway where the speed limit's 5 miles an hour more than Blue Ridge Cutoff. And we don't have any breakdown lanes on Blue Ridge Cutoff. So I'm sure traffic will manage. I'm sure there's going to be some inconvenience somewhere along the way, but it's part of doing that development. As far as the comment about bicycle lanes and how much they'd be used, and I brought it up in municipal, we had the discussion that with the street lights about controlling street lights and how it would help emissions and how we would take that knowledge from what we had and be able to use it at other stoplights. And there was a great amount of concern about that. But yet the two most clean types of transportation are your feet and a bicycle. I can't think of anything else. I don't remember anybody putting pollution controls on bicycles or feet. And it's an opportunity for people to get out in the community, to walk, to ride their bikes, to get to know their neighbors, to use alternative transportation to get from point A to point B, for people to get out and exercise and utilize this community that we've got. And so I would encourage staff to continue to go out and look for funding like this. Yeah, we have other needs in this community, but developing this corridor, although we may have to spend a couple $100,000 on it, what is going to be the benefit financially to the community down the road when we've developed business along that corridor? And so you got to weigh those costs that way. So thanks again, staff.
Any other discussion? Alderman Pardue?
Yeah, I just wanted to voice what I've heard from a lot of people is that they do want bike lanes. They want to be able to ride their bikes around town. When the question was asked how many people walk 350, there can't be many because we don't have a way to do it right now. So I think that this is a great way to improve bike safety. I mean, I think as we get more of these lanes and more sidewalks, we're going to see a lot more people walking to coffee shops, and as we're bringing in more restaurants, it only makes sense when the gas prices are this high to offer these services. So I think it's a great idea for us to do this, and I think this is what taxpayers are paying taxes for. So,
Mayor Pro Tem.
Alderman White?
I do have a question. Mr. Knoll, the $211,000 approximately that we would be spending, isn't that coming from our one-time funds?
Correct. That's what we're anticipating is approximately $60,000 would be from this year, and the matching amount would come in the following year when construction would be initiated. And
I remember when, this isn't a question directed to you, but I remember when we got those funds and we were offered the chance to spend them and make suggestions for them, and most of us didn't have ways to spend it right away. We put that money away specifically because we thought opportunities would come up that we needed to take advantage of, and this is one of those opportunities. And this opportunity helps us, as Mr. Knoll stated earlier, finish connecting the dots. We've had this dot situation going on all over the city, and we're starting to see the benefits. And this would, again, enhance our program. And what we're talking about when we're talking about this is the quality of life for our citizens and setting the direction for what we want our city to be in the future. And I think this is very, very important.
Any other discussion?
I do.
Alderman Ertz.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to get your attention today. We tried it all.
I think I started that thing myself. I should notice it right
Yes.
off. So.
Yeah, I do agree. This would be, in my mind, a good source for one-time funds. It is going to enhance the city. I did talk to Tom Cole, and he had no problem with it. In fact, I think he probably thought it would help enhance economic development along the highway. Being that this is a first reading, do we need a motion to continue it to a date certain? We're just
No,
here to
this is the
discuss.
first
Okay,
reading.
thanks. Just want to see if it.
Alderman Asher,
Yes?
I have a question. With the spending of $211,000 for this one-time fund expenditure, how much does that leave in the one-time fund account?
I don't know that fund balance off the top of my head. I'd have to ask our finance director, Jeremy Wilmoth, if he is more familiar with that amount.
Good evening. There's a few pots that we've been kind of talking about as staff. So the primary pot is the general fund, undesignated fund balance, which has just over $1 million in it for projects. The capital sales tax also has roughly $500,000 that we're starting to earmark for special projects, some of which we had anticipated might be used for this project.
So the $211,000 could come out of the capital sales tax amount of $500,000?
It could.
Okay.
I don't envision that all of it would. I think there'd be a split between the two.
Okay.
Again, the general fund's going to have the least amount of restrictions on it, so saving that for other projects that may not be
Right.
accessible to the capital sales tax would be prudent. So that's
And
why
so
we want to
is
do
that
kind of a split.
specified in here of where it's coming from?
No, because we're just applying at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Isn't that?
Mr. Van Buskert?
Thank you. Just a couple things, kind of in response to some of the comments that have been made. But we do have some existing bike lanes in the city. I'm on those roadways a lot, and very, very seldom do you see bicycles in those bike lanes. Very seldom. In fact, some of them I've never seen a bicycle on. But we went through the expense of putting the bike lane in. And MoDOT's safety record is not always good. You can look at some of their projects and you just shake your head and go, wow, they couldn't have used good judgment with that one. You need to go out to Lee Summit and the exit entrance ramp off of 470. Huge hazard. The one getting off and coming on off of 50 highway, then on to get onto Chipman Road. Quite a safety hazard. But MoDOT, designed and approved that. So everything they do isn't necessarily always good. I'm not saying everything's bad. And again, I think to enhance the highway, to improve it, I'm all for that. That's great. I want to do that. But I don't want to create other problems. I don't think we need to create other problems in doing that. And I think that we need to be careful about how we spend the taxpayers' money and that we make sure we use it where it could be best spent. And the amount of traffic on 350 highway surpasses any other traffic anywhere else in the city by so much. There just isn't any way to make comparisons with any other roadway in our city. It's a huge amount. I wish we had a figure as to the exact amount right now, but I know it's continuing to increase all the time. Thank you.
I've reserved my comments as Alderman for Ward 2 tonight to the end, just out of respect, because I'm acting as Mayor Pro Tem on behalf of Mayor Barrows, who's not here. But I'd just like to make a comment on behalf of the people of Ward 2. You know, always when we think about taxpayer dollars, we set priorities. And that's not always easy to do, because sometimes when we spend money, it may affect a lot of people, and other times not so many people. And the bike trail probably is a good example of that. I'd like to make a comparison that a long time ago, back about the time I ended my teenage years, the city of Kansas City decided that they were no longer interested in light rail. They thought that the future was to go strictly with automobiles, and that they had no interest in the future of light rail. And now, at a time when gasoline is threatening to go over $4 a gallon, and we'd like to maybe wish we had some light rail, some fast light rail, people aren't interested in it because the cost it would take, where would the dollars come from? Bicycle paths are kind of the same way. And I do see them as staying abreast with the future. This is the decision that's been taking place probably for at least a decade or a little longer. We're trying to make communities more congruent with the rest of the communities and speak about the interest of people who do ride bicycles, no matter how many there may or may not be. But perhaps I'm thinking in the future there will be a lot more people interested in riding bikes, as that we're already seeing this today. And to just say, well, we don't know how many will be riding bikes, or we have an interest in that, I don't think is smart, because we can't govern where the future is going to take us. I do like the idea of seeing Raytown staying abreast with what the rest of this country is doing and the rest of the metropolitan area. And at the same time, people in Raytown do like seeing new things. They like what they're seeing. They like the new businesses that are coming in. And at the same time, I do believe that not just the people that do ride bikes, but the people that like to see our community staying abreast. So, you know, I do support this effort by both the federal government, by the state of Missouri, MoDOT, and by the citizens of Raytown that want to think about the future and keep Raytown moving in that same line towards the future. So I think this is a good measure. Is there any other discussion before we move on?
Yes, Mr. Azure.
Mr. Hamilton?
I'm cognizant of some of the safety issues that aldermen have raised, and I believe I have some concerns about safety too, but I do think this is a worthwhile project. And I wonder, looking at the description here that we've been given, it references retaining walls. Does this imply there's going to be some wall between the highway and the bike path? Or has that design even been looked at yet?
We have a preliminary design where we anticipate there will be some need for retaining walls to make the connection from the bike ped trail at Blue Ridge Boulevard, because there's where 350 highway goes underneath Blue Ridge Boulevard.
Right.
We'll have to come up by Mid-America Coach. We think there will be a need for some retaining walls in that specific area to make that connection to the sidewalks that have just been constructed along Blue Ridge Cutoff.
So it doesn't have anything to do with a safety issue?
That's correct.
Okay. The other comment I would have is, I think in general, over the years that I've been on this board, we have basically encouraged staff to seek out grants wherever they may be and whatever they're for. And so I think we need to be cognizant of that, since that has been the sense and direction that we have wanted to move, and the staff has done just that many times and have been successful, quite successful. So I'm reluctant to hear criticism or what sounds like criticism, in terms of obtaining these grants and using this money to better our city. That's all.